What you're about to hear is a kind of fable, a parable, if you like. A story about a salesman who discovered a simple and better way to more sales, and he did it with less stress. Now put yourself in his position and come on a journey into the world of the one-minute salesperson. Once, there was a very successful salesperson. He felt more than successful. He felt prosperous. He enjoyed peace of mind, financial independence, security, good health, and an enjoyable social life. He had the respect and admiration of all who knew him. Many people wanted to do business with him, and even more people wanted him as a friend. But he hadn't always been so successful. He could remember many years when he tried harder, but did no better than most people. Now he was glad he knew what he knew, and more importantly, that he put it to use. The man smiled as he thought how easily he had finally learned to prosper. The man remembered thinking when he was still in college, perhaps if I can learn to sell well, I'll do well in whatever I undertake. After he graduated with a degree in marketing, he realized he'd learned very little about sales. Marketing and sales sometimes seemed at odds. In his first real sales job for a major firm, he learned about the importance of product knowledge and how to pitch it to the prospects, to get appointments, to answer objections, and to close a sale. But the more he was involved in sales, the more he got the impression that the underlying presumption was that the customer didn't want to buy the product. For a while he enjoyed the challenge. The tougher it got, the more he called on his self-discipline and persistence. He forced himself to go out and make one more call each day, and it added up. He made more than 200 more sale calls each year, and it paid off. He made more sales, and he made more money. So he decided to add another 100 calls a year. And then a strange thing happened. Sales didn't increase very much, and it wasn't much fun anymore either. He pushed much harder, and then came the stress. Like other salespeople, the man often felt the quiet fear of rejection. Some people would inevitably turn him down, and to make matters worse, as much as he wanted to deny it, he saw now how increasingly complicated the selling process seemed to be in today's changing world. He'd been repeating the same words that had given him sales for years, but they weren't working anymore. Then he remembered an unusual story. From time to time, he'd heard about a legendary salesman, one who made more sales than anyone he'd heard of. Yet this salesman was able to find plenty of leisure time, more than most people, in fact, so he could enjoy his extraordinary success. The man heard he was called the one-minute salesman. The man thought about this legendary salesman. There must be a better way. A way to restore some sense of fun and find some success once again. The man decided to be bold, to find out for himself, to track down this one-minute salesman. Sure, I'd be very happy to meet with you. And from the tone of your voice, I think I know just what you'd like to talk about.
Do I sound that desperate?
No, you just sound like a man who's taken the traditional approach of selling about as far as it can go.
I'm not the first, I take it.
That's right. And like others before you, you sound like you're open and ready to learn. That's why I've agreed to meet with you. Drop by anytime tomorrow. Come in. Take a chair. You know something? Most of the Fortune 1000 CEOs come from marketing and sales. Really. Look at me, for instance. I've been in sales for a long, long time. It's taught me how to sell ideas.
See, I used to think I knew what selling was all about, but now I'm not so sure. It seems like I'm doing everything right, but...
You mean you've read all the books, you go to motivational rallies every chance you get, and you work many nights and weekends.
How did you know?
And now you've reached the point of diminishing returns. Working longer hours while your sales figures are standing still.
That's right, and I'm enjoying it less.
Well, I don't mean to rub it in, but you might be interested to know that my record sales years were accomplished in 20-hour weeks.
Ow. But that's what I need to hear. I've heard you're pretty good. Now, they call you the one-minute salesman. Why is that?
Well, I'm only called that by those people who don't understand my success. Here, take this. I'll write it out for you. A 1-minute sales person with a $sign for the S in sales. Here, take it.
Why salesperson instead of salesman?
Well, I once had a great manager. A man we called the 1-minute manager because he got such great results in so little time, in just a few key minutes. He taught me a simple principle, encouraged me to adapt it in my own way and apply it to sales. Now, thinking of myself as a 1-minute salesperson helps me remember the most important secret in selling. It's as simple as this. Behind every sale is a person. The other person, the one so many people call a customer or a prospect, is in fact a person. If you treat him or her as a commodity or as anything but a person, you reduce yourself to a peddler.
Well, then why did you write out salesperson with a $sign, with the S as the $sign?
Because, frankly, it reminds me of one of my personal goals, to make money. Part of your problem is that you think there's a contradiction here. The fact is, if I'm consistently making money, it's almost always a sure sign I am adding value to the other person, to the buyer.
Oh, that's sure not part of my thinking when I'm out there scratching to make a buck. Now, tell me about the 1-minute part.
Well, there's several key minutes in each sale. When I say that behind every sale there's a person, I really mean it in two ways. One person is the buyer, and the other person is the seller. The key minutes in the 1-minute selling are those that apply to each, the buyer and the seller. There are two parts to 1-minute selling, selling to others and selling to me. Do you know the 80-20 rule?
Sure. 80% of our results are produced by about 20% of what we do, and 80% of our sales are accounted for by 20% of the customers.
And 20% of the people on most sales forces make almost 80% of the total sales.
Yes. Boy, it seems I'm always trying to get into or stay in that top 20%. But what's that got to do with the 1-minute selling?
Well, long ago, I set out to identify and understand what the best 20% do differently. As I studied what made up those differences, it became clear to me it was only a matter of investing a few minutes to do those things that separated the best from the average. Now, after I got a crystal clear idea of what those differences are, and when those minutes occur, my sales results improve dramatically. Let me ask you very directly. Do you know what the key minutes are in your selling style? Or do you spend time and energy doing the unnecessary? Now, I certainly don't know everything about selling. I doubt that anyone does, but I do know what the key minutes are for me. And you deserve to know what yours are. When you do, you'll sell more quickly. Some of the key minutes are actually very simple. But learning them now wouldn't be much use. That is, not until you become clear on why I wrote person and why I wrote sales with a $sign. Making money is important. It's one of my goals, but it's not my purpose in life, not even in selling.
Making money is not your purpose in selling? That's hard to follow. Why else would I be out there?
Well, I suggest when you can answer that question, your whole career will turn around. It's the lesson of the wonderful paradox. I used to view the world as a tough dog-eat-dog environment in which I was afraid I wasn't going to do very well. That is, until I discovered how practical the paradox was, especially when I finally started to use it in sales and in my life. I'm still amazed by its power.
So what is this wonderful paradox?
The wonderful paradox. I have more fun and enjoy more financial success when I stop trying to get what I want and start helping other people get what they want. What you do to sell successfully will probably be somewhat different from what I and others do. You'll develop your own uniquely successful style. You'll discover what to do for yourself very easily once you understand and decide to start selling on purpose.
Well, what does that mean, selling on purpose?
Well, purpose in selling can be thought of on two levels. First, selling on purpose means that I'm usually conscious of what I'm doing. I'm not unconsciously repeating a memorized sales routine. On each sales call, I am doing what I am doing consciously, on purpose. The second deeper level of selling on purpose is, well, that's where the real power is. You appreciate the difference between a goal, for example, making money, and a purpose?
Well, I'm not sure. I would say a goal is something you accomplish. It has a beginning and an end, while a purpose is more ongoing and gives meaning to our lives. I guess when people have a purpose in life, they enjoy everything they do more.
Aha. Have you ever taken the tombstone test?
No, I think I would have remembered that.
Well, it can help you figure out purpose. Ask yourself, what would I like to have written on my tombstone? That is, what was my purpose in life? If what you're doing to make a living doesn't complement your purpose in life, then you're going to be unhappy, and you'll find it harder and harder to succeed. Do you want your tombstone to read, he won the sales contest? Or he moved a lot of product? Or would you like your tombstone to read, he helped many people get what they wanted, and so he got what he wanted?
Gee, I never thought of it that way. I'm not so sure I know what people really want.
Well, what do you want? When you answer that, you'll probably know what other people want.
Well, I guess I want to feel good about what I'm doing, and especially about myself.
Exactly. Now you're getting very close to the core power of 1 minute selling, to the purpose. It's helping people get what you want to get. Let me show you something I have written down. I carry it in my wallet and look at it often. It's my selling purpose. Now, whether I'm selling a service, a product, or an idea to someone, I always do better when I remember to sell on purpose. Now, my selling purpose is to help people get the good feelings they want about what they bought and about themselves.
My selling purpose is to help people get the good feelings they want about what they bought and about themselves.
That's it.
Other people want the same thing I want. We don't just need other people or need to help other people. We are other people. To tell you the truth, it hadn't occurred to me to have such a purpose. I just had a lot of goals.
Well, the fastest way to achieve your goals is to stay on purpose. Has it ever occurred to you that you're already adding value to your customers? Fact is, with a product or service you believe in, selling is inherently purposeful. You do add value. You help people solve problems, seize opportunities, and by acting, feel better about themselves. You can either recognize that fact or not.
Well, what's the difference if you don't recognize it?
Ah. Are you saying you don't care?
Oh, I guess I care. Actually, I'm not sure.
Frankly, that's probably been your biggest problem. You can either be blind to the fact that you are contributing and go right on trying to get your hands in your customers' pockets, not feeling all that great about yourself in the process, or you can give yourself credit for the fact that you are serving, helping, contributing, making a difference, adding value.
I guess it comes down to caring about your customers, doesn't it? It comes down to caring about your customers, doesn't it?
Now you have it. I couldn't tell you the answer myself because you'd have thought I was preaching. But caring is what purpose is all about.
I see what you mean. A customer can tell if you care or not. I used to care a lot when I was just starting out, but I guess I got into a rut. No wonder fewer people bought from me.
No wonder selling stopped being fun for you.
I can see we're not just talking about fulfillment or fun. We're talking about customers who trust me and give me referrals and stick with me for the long haul.
Now you're getting at my real secret. That's how I made so many sales in so little time. My satisfied customers would advise other people to buy from me. Often they'd call me and I didn't even have to sell.
When you put it that way, selling on purpose isn't just an issue of being nice, but of being smart.
That's why we started with purpose. It is the single major difference that sets apart the top 20% from the other 80%.
Let me ask you this. When I'm out there in the real world, how will I remember to sell on purpose?
Like all 1 minute selling, it's easy. I just invest a minute when I'm selling to ask myself, am I more concerned with trying to get what I want, or am I really helping other people get what they want? So when I see that I'm thinking about myself, just get right back on the purpose and focus on the other guy. Now that is easy. But remember, The slogans and the tombstone legends and reminders are just that, reminders. Selling on purpose is an intention, a way of life, the philosophy from which you operate, not a slogan. To put it your way, it's caring.
Caring is a very powerful word for me.
Then that's exactly what you need to bring back into your sales life. I've seen it over and over. When salespeople are aware of their purpose, of what really turns them on, and invest that into everything they do, they not only sell their products and services more easily.
They have more fun.
Ah, here. This may interest you. Go ahead. Take this list of names. All the people on that list, men and women, feel that they are more successful since they've learned how to be a one-minute salesperson. After they learn to sell on purpose, they use selling methods with others and with themselves that take only a minute or so to do. Some of the methods I taught them, others they developed on their own. They have various backgrounds and come from various ethnic groups. Some are young, others are older. Several are professionals who sell very different kinds of products or services. Others are people who are not involved in sales in the usual sense, but they successfully sell their ideas to other people and have more success in their work. Go ahead. Pick any half dozen and talk with them. You'll soon discover these principles work in varying degrees for almost everybody. They're based on universal principles about the way people think, feel, and act. The man left the chief executive's office. He felt energized, light. The list of contacts now carefully lodged in his wallet. The first name on the list was Dr. Elizabeth Simmons. Elizabeth Simmons worked at a university where she was vice president of the Alumni Association.
I understand you're interested in learning what many of us have learned from the one-minute salesperson. To tell you the truth, I only learned about it a few years ago myself. Until then, I never thought of myself as being able to sell anything.
Can you tell me what you actually do when you sell?
What do you usually do before a sale?
Oh, I try to find out something about the company and the person I'm calling on.
I know, that's very important and useful. But what's on your mind during that minute just before you get face-to-face with the other person?
Well, I go over objections that might come up and things that could go wrong.
So when you think of it, you paint a mental picture in your mind of what will happen before it happens. What you've just told me is that you think about what could go wrong. Oh, does that sound familiar? That's what I used to do just before I went into a faculty meeting or a fundraising event. I thought I was being practical, and I was trying to be well prepared, but all I got were disappointing results. Now, before I start to help anybody buy anything, I take a minute, and that is about all it takes, to see the entire encounter running smoothly from beginning to end. I call this process the one-minute rehearsal.
You see it all in only 1 minute?
All the important parts. Take a look at television commercials that appeal to you. The best ones manage to identify with your problem and then make both you and the advertiser look great for getting together, all in a minute or less. A good 1-minute rehearsal looks a lot like that, especially the fun commercials. The more upbeat and positive your 1-minute rehearsal, the more likely your success. In fact, whenever I am successful, I know I've chosen consciously or unconsciously to use the positive thoughts that created my success. The first part is a walk in the other person's shoes, seeing things from his side. The second part is the advantages, how the features of my product combine to solve his problem. And the third part, as corny as it may sound, is the happy ending, seeing the other person using and benefiting from what he buys and feeling good about it.
Would you explain each one of these?
I don't mean to be rude, but no, I won't. At least not to your immediate satisfaction. No one can ever learn fully through someone else's explanation, but sometimes a hint or two can help us pull the answers from within or figure things out for ourselves.
So that's what the 1-minute salesperson was up to with me. Instead of telling me about purpose, he drew it all out of me.
But he couldn't have done it if you didn't already know. Let's try you again with the 1-minute rehearsal. How for example, do you think you could take a walk in the other person's shoes?
Well, I suppose I could just remember how I feel when I'm the buyer. Ironically, I tend to distrust people who are selling me. And I want good value for the money I spend. I want to be able to count on the person I'm buying from for service if I need it.
You see, you just did what the best salespeople know. Before I can walk in another person's shoes, I must first take off my own. You just took off your seller's shoes and put on your buyer's shoes. Once you've done that, it makes every sale easier. It's like parents who successfully sell their ideas to their children because they also take a minute to see things from their children's point of view. The second part of the rehearsal is almost as easy, especially if you've done your homework on the service, product, or idea you're selling. If you've been smart enough to study and keep up on the latest features of what you have to offer, you can quickly review the advantages, how they can be applied to the other person's advantage.
And the third part of the 1-minute rehearsal, the happy ending.
How would you see the third part?
Well, that would vary, depending on who was buying what from me.
Exactly. I see it differently in my own mind if I'm helping a student buy an idea or an alumnus make a financial contribution.
You know, I think I'm beginning to get how the 1-minute rehearsal works. While you were talking, I was mentally seeing an important client I'll be calling on soon. I saw her needs from her viewpoint. I saw the practical advantages to her of what I'm presenting, and I saw her buying and benefiting from using it and feeling good about it. I was beginning to feel the energy, the power of helping the other person get the feelings she wants. Is that a common reaction?
Yes, it is. We use a lot of words to describe that feeling. Words like confidence, courage, a winning attitude. That's the feeling that fuels high performance and ensures better results. But remember, the worrisome images we create and play in our minds are just as powerful. These are the images that create fear and doubt. The exciting reality is that we can create and play the mental movies of our choice. That's power.
The man reflected on what he'd learned from the university administrator. It certainly confirmed his early thoughts, that when people learned how to sell, they prosper in many different ways. Now he was about to meet John Turnquist. Turnquist was one of the most successful salespeople in insurance. In the past, he'd been uncomfortable with a man like Turnquist. After all, here was someone right at the top. But the young man had mentally rehearsed for this meeting, had already seen an enjoyable outcome, and he felt energized and confident.
I never cared much for teachers before, but you people don't seem to teach so much as you help me like to learn.
Well, that's the secret that makes selling so easy for me. I never forget that people hate to be sold, but they love to buy. When I'm at my best, I find that all I'm doing is helping people do what they already like to do, to feel good about what they buy.
Well, now, I'd like to believe it's that simple, but I find that people resist any salesperson. I do it myself.
What I hear you saying is that you hate to be sold, and who doesn't? When you feel you're being sold, you question the intent of the other person and don't feel that you're in control of what's happening. Now, just the opposite is true when you know you're doing the buying, huh? It's fun. You enjoy it. Now, that happens when the salesperson is clearly on your side and doesn't stray from what you want.
I see what you mean. People buy for their reasons, not ours.
Sure, and that's why my sale approach is based on this. When I want to remember how to sell, I simply recall how I and other people like to buy. Are you familiar with the 1-minute rehearsal?
Yes. In fact, I did one myself right before I came in here today. It felt good.
Well, what you accomplish in that 1-minute rehearsal before the sale simplifies your job during the sale. All you have to do is help the other person share the image you've already created to his advantage.
Let's see if I read you right. It's up to me during the sale to help the other people see the commercial that I had them starring in, recognizing their problem, seeing my product in action to solve it, and thereafter enjoying the good feelings they want.
Exactly, but remember beforehand, you can at best anticipate their needs and the feelings they want. During the process, you have a chance to adapt your vision to their reasons for buying. Now, one of the most helpful values we provide is helping people recognize what they really want, right? We do that with our ability to ask relevant questions and use intense listening. Intense listening.
Now, can you give me an example of both of these?
Well, sure, that's easy. I ask have questions. Like, what do you like most about what you already have? And then want questions. Like, what do you want that you don't have? Would it be fair to ask what you like least about what you've got? And so on. Now, this is where good listening and good feedback come in. If you listen closely to their answers, you'll be able to hear whether there is any difference between what they have now and what they want, which adds up to how they'd like to be feeling. Then I take a minute to summarize the key points, repeating them back to let them know I've listened and understood. Most important, I very clearly point out the difference between what they've got and what they want, so they can recognize their problem and discover the feelings they want.
Why is that so important?
Well, that makes everything else that follows easier. Have you ever presented a solution to a problem that someone didn't feel he had?
Yeah, and it's frustrating.
All right, compare that with saying, "Sir, based upon what you told me about so-and-so, basically his needs, I'd like to suggest such and such, my product, service, or idea." Now, that's how problems and solutions are tied together, right? I used to sell radial tires before I sold insurance. And I sold more tires than anyone else.
And let me guess, you did it in less time than the other salespeople.
Now, how did you guess that? I once called on a trucking account, and the competition for the order was fierce. But I noticed the buyer's family photographs on his desk. We began talking about life, and it was obvious that we both cared about family life. We talked about his truck drivers and how often they were away from their families and what would happen to their families if anything were to happen to them. Then I presented the safety features of our radial tires. Everyone else was featuring mileage and economy. Guess who got the big contract?
I see. So you took the few extra minutes to listen to what the buyer was really interested in, safety, instead of going in and pitching what you thought was important about your product.
That's it. Find out what the other person wants.
But what if you can't find out?
Well, I do two things. First, I ask more questions and listen more intently. Usually, by investing the few extra minutes, I discover his needs.
And if you don't?
Well, if he feels that he doesn't have a need, then I get out of that person's office. I never create a need, since that is not the other person's best interest. It would also rob me of 80% of my time and get only 20% of my results. The fastest way to sell is to honestly help people see how it's really in their best interests. Then they will act, and they'll act quickly. If it's not, well, I refer them to the best source I know and get on to the next person I can really help. I don't waste time kidding myself or the other person.
Please turn over the cassette. We continue on the other side.
Next on the list was Diane Rossini. The one-minute salesperson had told the young man that Rossini was the most successful salesperson he'd ever known. She could get a massive amount of work done with so little effort. She was a professional. Her secret was her ability to get other people to refer many other buyers to her. This meant she spent very little time cold calling. It meant she spent most of her time taking orders from people who wanted to buy specifically from her. And sitting across from Diane Rossini confirmed one thing. She certainly seemed relaxed. She seemed to have all the time in the world.
You know what's important for me? The key minutes in a sale come after people buy from me. These minutes pay the highest rewards. The majority of salespeople seldom contact the people they've helped after the sale has been made.
Come to think of it, I don't contact most of the people I sell afterward either, unless, of course, there's a problem.
Did you ever wonder why?
Well, I've found that most of the time salespeople don't like to contact their customers just because they're afraid there might be a problem.
It's the no news is good news syndrome. What's happening is that the majority of people who buy something, from baby buggies to battleships, are not used to being contacted after the sale. What I'm going to tell you now seems to be the best kept secret I know among salespeople. After I sell on purpose, people feel good about what they bought and about themselves, and so they give me invaluable referrals. You see, it's the referrals that does it.
So, people don't just do it for you, but because it makes them feel good to help their friends. People do things for their reasons, not ours. It sounds so simple.
Success is doing the simple well. I think that most salespeople don't follow up after the sale because they're afraid they'll hear bad news. Let me explain. After people have bought, I telephone them several times. I let them know that the purpose of my calls is to find out if they're enjoying and benefiting from using what they bought from me. If they are, I honestly and briefly praise them for their buying decision. I remind them of something specific they did during the sales process that helped them make such a good decision. I keep a simple file on every customer that includes that kind of information. After I've praised them, I tell them about a gift that I'm sending them. Usually it's an inexpensive feature they could have bought but didn't. You know, one that has added value. It's a means of doing something beyond what they expected. For most people, the phone calls and praisings are enough, and investing these brief minutes after the sale keeps me on purpose. Then I ask them if they know other people who would appreciate my help. Most people are more than happy to oblige. When I take good care of customers, they take good care of me, with referrals galore.
What if the news is bad after the sale and things aren't working? Then what do you do?
First, I don't see it as bad news. That's something we create in our heads. It's only information. My experience is that any information I get gives me an opportunity to help, to provide added value with service. And most people are fair. They know that sometimes things get off track. But usually their past experience in these situations is that nobody seems to care. So they're surprised when I jump in and am excited about the opportunity to help. These bad experiences usually provide me my best referrals later, and they often lead to repeat business. That's why it's so easy for me to get excited and stay excited, even when things are going wrong.
You know, when I came in here, I saw how relaxed you were. And now I hear your excitement when you talk about helping your customers. What a nice combination. Relaxed excitement.
And why not? You have all those people out there thanking you by giving you referrals. It's as if they're working for you, for free. That's what I call making more sales with less stress.
Sales manager David Schmidt came around from behind his desk. The two men shook hands. Schmidt was a humorous character, easygoing and relaxed, and he made it clear that he was there to help the young man. It wasn't long before he explained the second part of 1 minute selling. All right, the first half, selling to others, is taking good care of the customer, right? The second part, selling to me, is taking good care of the salesperson. But as good as it is for the customer and for the salesperson, you know what I like best about it? I like the second half of the 1 minute selling, the self-management half, because it makes my job a lot easier, right? People are managing themselves, it saves me time and energy, and there's less personnel turnover.
Why less turnover?
Because our salespeople like it. It's a great way for them to take good care of themselves. And when the people in my department take just as good care of themselves as they do with their customers, they make more sales more easily, huh? They enjoy working here more. And as you know, salespeople are in the field selling and are not under the scrutiny of an office manager. Salespeople like this. One of the reasons many of them went into sales is because they like being their own boss. Makes them feel good. In fact, self-managed selling realizes that the better people feel about themselves, the better job they do. It's based on just this. Salespeople who feel good about themselves produce good results. The very best managers are discovering that people feel best about themselves at work when they want to do something, not when they have to do something. When people see that they're doing something for themselves, they're more apt to actually do it, and without being constantly managed.
That's like the first half of 1 minute selling. When the other person feels he's getting what he wants, to feel good about what he's buying and about himself for buying, he's more apt to do it. The same method of selling to others can be used in selling you to you.
Exactly.
It's a very powerful parallel. Well, how do you, as a sales manager, help your salespeople to do this?
Hey, I like you. Before we talk about how we do it, let's look at the basic source of power for each individual salesperson who uses self-managed selling. It's simply this. Self-managed selling first helps me realize how good I already am, and then it lets me enjoy becoming even better. All right. The most powerful fuel for high personnel performances in selling is high self-esteem. You asked how I help our salespeople feel good about themselves. I'm going to tell you. First, I began by becoming a 1-minute manager. By that, I mean that I used 3 effective management methods. I set 1-minute goals, I gave 1-minute praisings, and I applied 1-minute reprimands. And I got very good results. But I knew that salespeople were unique. They were out in the world selling, needed to be their own managers, but they wanted some practical help from me, right? So I adapted these methods for my salespeople into 1-minute self-management. Once they learned to use it, they loved it because it gives them what they want, control over their own lives.
But how do they use the 3 methods?
What am I, a mind reader? Why don't you ask them?
Accounting for sales is now more important in every business. Even doctors and lawyers are now marketing and advertising their services.
Carolyn Stafford, CPA, on her way to becoming a senior partner in a prestigious accounting firm. She knew how to use the 3 secrets of self-managed selling.
I never thought I'd like to sell or that I'd be able to sell. But I've made more money, and I even enjoy my job more.
I gather then that you appreciate your sales manager, am I right?
I think he's an exceptional manager because he helped me learn to manage myself.
Well, specifically, what are these 1-minute goals, and just how do they help you in self-managed selling?
They're goals I can often see in my mind in only a minute. You'll see why that's important later.
But could you please explain more about each of these things that you do?
Like other 1-minute salespeople, I've learned that about 20% of what I do during the day gives me about 80% of my payoff. So the first thing I do is sort out what that important 20% is, and then I concentrate only on that. I choose not to do the 80%, the unnecessary. I do less work, so I'm less tired. So I have the energy and concentration to do important things well.
Well, can you give me an example of how you use this technique?
Well, a good example of this 20/80 law is analyzing my sales accounts. When I look closely, I realize that about 20% of my accounts give me and my company about 80% of our cash flow. So I concentrate on doing an outstanding job on this 20%. Then I set it up so that the other 80% of potential accounts who hear about the great job I'm doing with the key 20% contact me to get the same benefits. It's efficient because they come to me.
Well, what do you do on the key 20%?
After I decide who the 20% are, the second thing I do is write down specifically what I'd like to see happen for me. I write out these key goals in 2 parts: what I'm doing and how I feel. I write it in the first person, present tense, as though it's already real. I am doing, I am feeling.
Is that all there is to it?
Not quite. To let me more easily feel that my goal has already come true, I dress it up with words that help me feel the advantages for myself. And that's the critical thing, my feeling that it's already true. We become what we think about.
We become what we think about. You know, that's like a basketball coach I heard of once. He divided his team into 2 groups. He wanted to see which group could most improve its free throw shooting. One group practiced shooting every day while the other group practiced for the same amount of time, only in their mind's eye. They just saw their shots going into the basket 100% of the time. They saw themselves winning. When the two groups competed, those who thought about scoring points more often did indeed outscore their teammates. We become what we think about.
That's a great example. That's like the 1-minute sales rehearsal we use before the sale. We help the other person get what he wants by seeing him first in our own mind, already feeling good about getting what he wanted.
Now let's see. 1-minute goals are based on the same psychological principles. They just help us get what we want.
You just said what I was going to tell you, that selling others and selling yourself are very much alike. In fact, you just proved what the 1-minute salesperson says. We all have the answers within us if we just listen to ourselves. You've already discovered that you have the answers inside you. I'm glad my manager helped me discover it for myself, because I now realize that we all do. And you've just demonstrated it. I'm only just learning that the more I know what I want to do, the more I can figure out how to do it myself.
Can you give me another example of what you're talking about, one that's related specifically to sales?
Sure. Let's say you want to increase your sales. You might write down your goal this way. I'm increasing my sales by 3% this month, and I'm enjoying the recognition and rewards that come along with this, including making more money and feeling more peaceful.
3% doesn't seem like much. Would that be a high enough goal to set?
A month? Think about it.
Well, if I kept increasing my sales by 3% each month, I'd increase my sales by over 35% a year, wouldn't I?
Practically.
When the man left Carolyn Stafford's office, he called the next person on his list, Leon Williams. It was easy. Williams invited the young man to his office. Right. A lot of sales managers are interested in salespeople having determination and perseverance as part of their working style, but only the best ones know where those things come from.
And where's that?
It's inside the salesperson. That's the reason for self-management. It's not just to help you use your time well, although that is important. It's to bring out the best in yourself, all by yourself. And the good news is that it's much easier to do than most people realize, and it only takes a minute.
Yeah, but how do you do it?
Let me give you a useful overview. The self-management system is based on this goal. Goals begin behaviors. Consequences maintain behaviors.
I know about the 1-minute goals.
Well, as powerful as goals are, I'll tell you something that's even more powerful. Self-managed selling. It's based on the obvious fact that people who feel good about themselves produce good sales results.
I know that's true with me.
Yeah, you and everyone else on this planet. The second secret of self-management. Here, read this plaque.
I help myself realize my sales goals by catching myself doing something right.
That's it.
See, I'm afraid I spend too much of my time catching myself doing something wrong. Like thinking of what I could have said during the sale but failed to, or how I could be making more cold calls.
Sure, just like the rest of us.
So how do you catch yourself doing something right?
That's the second secret to self-managed selling. Every now and then I give myself a 1-minute praising.
A what?
It's very simple, a 1-minute
Well, I'm
praising.
sure it is, but can you tell me how you do it?
Well, sure. As long as you realize...
No, as long as I realize that this is your way and that my way may be a bit different. I will. Now, can you give me the principles of a 1-minute praising?
All right, the main thing I do is to look often during the day for things that I am doing that will help me make more sales with less stress, right? I mean, like when I notice something that I'm doing right, like making a cold call or writing a follow-up letter, I catch myself, stop myself, and then I take a minute to praise myself. I spend the first half minute or so on my behavior and the last half on myself. And then I pause for a few seconds of silence, which seems like a long time when I do it, to let myself feel how good I feel about what I did. And this feeling is what it's all about. You don't want to just think well of what you have done. You want to feel good about it. That's where the power is. The power is in the feeling. Then, in the last half minute or so, after I've thought about my good behavior, then I think about my good self. the best part of who I feel I am. I remind myself, hey, I'm a good person, and even with my human faults, I basically like who I am. Hey, if I like it, I like it.
I know we all need to learn how to sell with our own style, whatever makes sense to us, right?
I can see you've been talking to some of the other one-minute salespeople. That's great, and that's right. Use the principles any way you see fit.
So little time. It takes so little time to do something as important as catching myself doing something right.
He had his doubts about one-minute selling, or about anything that only took a minute for that matter. But the more often he took that minute to do what he was learning, the more favorably he saw it. He asked himself what a one-minute salesperson did if he was not happy with his sales behavior. As soon as he met his next super successful salesperson, Cheryl Bartell, he got the answer.
That's when you introduce yourself to the third secret of self-managed selling. It's called the one-minute reprimand.
It figures. Let me see if I can work this out. When you do something bad, you take a minute out to reprimand yourself. Is that it?
No, it is not. Whenever I see that my sales behavior is unacceptable to me, I take a minute to reprimand my behavior and to praise myself. Look at the difference between what you said and what I've shown you. How alike we all are. Do you remember what the one-minute salesperson says about what people really buy? That they do not buy our service, product, or idea. That they buy how good they imagine they will feel when they are using them.
Right. I remember especially the part about buying a feeling they wanted.
Well, feeling good is the key to what we all want, including feeling good about ourselves. So when you give yourself a one-minute reprimand, remember two things if you really want to improve your own behavior. You want to feel bad about your behavior and good about yourself. When you spoke earlier about reprimanding yourself for your bad behavior, you fell into two traps. You never reprimand yourself. You reprimand only your behavior. And one other important difference. Your behavior's not bad. That's too judgmental, too tough on yourself. Do you want someone else to manage you, or do you want to manage yourself?
I'd rather manage myself. That's one of the reasons I got into sales. Hey, I like the freedom.
Me too. And with our freedom comes our responsibility to ourselves and to those who depend on us, including our company and our customers. If you want to manage yourself, then first realize that your behavior is not bad. It's simply unacceptable to you, because you feel it's getting in the way of what you want to make more sales with less stress. What do you think is the first thing you should do when you do something unacceptable?
I guess the first thing is to become aware of my own unacceptable behavior, to see it.
Excellent.
You know, as I learn more about self-managed selling, I can see that selling ourselves on ourselves is a lot like selling services, products, and ideas to others.
It certainly is.
He became a one-minute salesperson. It happened not just because he talked like one, but because he'd learned a better way to think and to believe. He learned about selling and about himself. And most importantly, he followed through on what he'd learned. He put his knowledge to good use. Sure, he varied what he did and how he did it from time to time, adapting new ideas for new situations. But he always relied on his solid foundation, and he sold on purpose. He was glad he'd learned that invaluable selling secret. It made everything else easier and more enjoyable for everyone, especially for himself. And he shared his knowledge with others. He even created a pocket-sized overall summary, kind of game plan for others who wanted to know the secret to his success. And he knew the more he shared his success, the more success he'd have himself. Many years later, the man looked back on the time when he'd first learned about one-minute selling. Since then, he'd experienced both personal and financial success, the things he was looking for, and he'd been recognized with a series of awards and promotions. He had become like his original teacher. He was especially glad he'd taken notes while he was learning how to sell. This collection of notes allowed him to make copies of the text and share his knowledge of selling secrets with new and with veteran salespeople. And in his new role as sales manager, it saved him time. It let others read and reread the text at their own pace, and as often as they found it beneficial. He knew full well the advantage of repetition when learning something new. As more salesmen and women who worked with him became successful themselves, he found that like the original one-minute salesperson, now he too had more time to himself. And as the people who reported to him became more prosperous, so did he. They made him look good. Then he remembered what he'd always known, that people don't really work for anyone but themselves. The one-minute sales system was simply a way for people to take good care of themselves. And what he enjoyed most was knowing that he no longer had to experience the daily emotional and physical stress he'd felt before, something he continued to see in others. Now he was living and working on purpose. And he knew that many other people who worked with him enjoyed the same benefits. His company had fewer costly personnel turnovers, less illness, less absenteeism. He felt capable of dealing with the present and well prepared for his future.
Hello?
Hello. You don't know me, but a friend of mine suggested I call because if you've got a moment, I'd like to talk to you about sales. I know I have a lot to learn, but I would like to learn from the best. Could I come and talk to you?
Well, sure, you can come over and talk to me, well, just about any time you like. I'd be glad to share my selling secrets with you. Now, before I do want to make one request.
What's that?
Simply that you take what I teach you and that you share it with others.